can't accept the loss, I'm hard-headed. There's a little bit of madness to my method. Many falling off that fine line that I'm treading. I risk anything to be great, and I'm not letting nobody rob me of my victory. Number one, that's what I'm meant to be. When by any means, only thing that makes sense.
Here we go. It is episode 11 of the Red, White, and Crew podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Man, we've got lots to cover today, and we're going to try to do it in not a lot of time. So thank you for joining us again. Episode 11, Red, White, and Crew podcast, and we have almost the entire crew. One of these days, we'll get the entire crew on here, but happy to be joined by. We'll go around the horn here real quick, making his. He's the debutant, right? Mr. Michael Merritt joining us. All right, along with Elias, Wes, as well as the dude with too many nicknames that I stopped tracking at this point. So the Mr. Mercenary FC himself, Brian Heyman. What's up, guys?
How we doing?
How's it going?
Recovered well from last night. We're good.
Get in a recovery session this morning?
Tried to, yeah. Get something.
Yeah, so, all right. Well, hey, before we dive in, thank you again for being here. Got to tell you really quick about our proud partners at Goal Getter. So this episode is brought to you by Goal Getter, a recruiting education platform built to help female soccer student athletes and their families navigate the path to college soccer. The process can feel overwhelming, especially when families don't fully understand the recruiting landscape. Goal Getter provides education, tools, and guidance families need to navigate the recruiting landscape and make informed decisions. If you've never heard of them, you owe it to yourself to check them out. Yes, they are new on the scene, but they are going to do great things, great ideas, and they are soccer-specific people, right? So something to think about. So for more information, you can visit them online at goalgetter.com. Again, that's GOLGETR.com. You can also follow them on Instagram and Twitter, or X for some, right? At Goalgetter Soccer. That's at GOLGETR Soccer to learn more. All right, gentlemen. So moment of truth, day after our first snub. But before we do that and kind of dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly, the recap from yesterday's 3-2 loss to Turkey, U.S. men's national team lost to Turkey. I want to go ahead and play this clip. I shared this with you guys yesterday, but wanted to play this because I felt like it hit on bits and pieces on what a lot of us discussed, and definitely some of the things that I had mentioned on our chat last night.
We're all different. Everybody has a different opinion. I hope that he saw what he wanted to see.
Kirk, what did you make of the game?
I've got no issue with the U.S. men's national team losing this game, though you would rather win the game. You had so much goodwill that you earned with the general public, casual Americans who don't really follow the sport, following the U.S. men's national. Because it's the World Cup, because you're winning, it would have been good to keep that momentum going. But it's the way you lose this game. And he sets up this team in a like-for-like manner, and you're going to probably elaborate more on this than I could ever, but if you have players in the starting 11 that play a certain manner because of the characteristics of each player, and you ask them these things in a certain setup, don't set the second team in the same setup and ask them to do the same thing if they're not the same players. He's got Giovanni Reyna playing in a Malik Tillman role, and Malik Tillman's a very different player than Giovanni Reyna. Giovanni Reyna won't give you the defensive ability. He gives you the offensive ability, yet he had Weston McKennie ahead of Gio Reyna. Don't ask a player like Timothy Weah to play on the left-hand side in that Christian Pulisic role and try to operate like Christian Pulisic. Don't ask Aronson to be Serginho Dest. Don't ask Trusty to be, Anthony Robinson. There was too many asks of this team, of a second-team personnel that don't really have that individually. So I've got no problem with the loss. As Jurgen said, you'd rather not lose, and if you did, group stage. There's circumstances to this, but it's the way you go about it that I don't think this team was set up in the right way to compete. And once changes.
All right, gentlemen. So thoughts. So many different directions we can go in. So I wanted to hit that point. Initial thoughts on again that video courtesy of ESPN FC, Hercules Gomez's take, along with a little tidbit of Jurgen Klinsmann. Just thoughts on that. Some of the points made there.
I mean, it's funny that he talks about he wanted to set them up the exact same way that they've been playing, but that's the third shape they've played in 3 games. They were 4-2-3-1 one game, then they were 3-5-2 the next game, or 4-4-2, whatever you want to call it, and then it's 4-3-3. So I think he made the right calls. I mean, you have 4 players on a yellow card. I mean, do you risk? Is it worth winning this game to not have one of them in the round of 32? You have 38-year-old Tim Ream, who's probably pushing his body to the absolute limit, and it's not like he's Messi or Ronaldo where they can walk around, in the box or wait, very physically demanding. Serginho Dest has had a great tournament, but he's also a glass man, right? Like he is an injury problem. So now you're looking at and Pulisic. So now you're looking at 8 of those changes were kind of made out of necessity, more so than the coach necessarily wanting to tinker around and trying to rest players. So, I mean, if we went and won this game and Pulisic pulls his calf again, or Tyler Adams gets a second yellow card, are we happy with that? Like, is everyone like, oh, we won? You know what I mean? So, I think it's an overreaction. I think a lot of people are overreacting, and I thought Poach said it well. I mean, like, who is it? It sounds like Turkey is the one moving on, and the U.S. is going home after last night from a lot of people. So, I don't get the uproar.
I think it's just that U.S. sports mind that they're always about winning. Everything is focused on winning, and they can't see past that. So for the rest of us that have an idea about what soccer is in the World Cup and how you have to navigate through these rounds and be smart about how you're using personnel and resting players when you can rest them. He did what he was supposed to do. Would have been nice to get the win last night for sure, but I think it exposed some of our depth issues at the back for sure. And it's something we're going to have to address years to come. Is we got to get better center backs that come in, can step in right away and play.
Yeah, and I think, and I did just hear from Fabrizio Romano that Turkiye is moving on. They have just landed in Cancun. So, Elias, I know we were discussing that yesterday. So they are moving on. But yeah, I agree. I feel like we kind of got caught. That was the tricky part about this match, right? Was excuse me, mentality versus the smart thing to do, right? In terms of resting some players. I think my take, where I agree with Herc, is the part of it was wholesale changes, man. 10, what was that, 10 of the 11? Which was, and how are you not going to expect, some, right, lack of chemistry on a certain level? Yes, you got some guys, some experience, but we also, I think what stood out to me was, it was the moment for some of these players to step up, regardless of what Poach was asking of them. Maybe some of them playing out of position, but, I mean, big losers on the night, I guess, in terms if you want to call it that. I hate to say that, but in terms of, we thought we'd see more from particularly Tim Weah, right? Tim Weah, Brandon Aronson, just, I mean, non-existent, right? Non-existent in that first half. Second half looked a lot better, but then again, just a lot of issues in the back in terms of depth, as Wes mentioned. So,
well, I guess my other question is, if they blow the whistle 30 seconds earlier, is everyone as upset?
well, I think that's the worst part about it, right? Was they showed fight. They came back in the second half, and it's one thing about how you go about it in terms of the lineup, who you're asking to play where, but then they showed fight. They came back as expected, right? And let's be honest, they probably should have had the lead in the last 15, 20 minutes. Pulisic comes on, generates multiple great chances. Keeper barely fingertips one out of the way, and he has another one where. And then we talked about it too. We had in those last 15, 20 minutes, there were guys falling all over the place, right? And he had a great look.
Yeah,
Pulisic had a great look that just went wide left.
And just to kind of, last thought on that, and then I'll let everyone else talk. The German media right now is talking about how, the group was wrapped up. It's not as big of a deal. We were resting people. We pulled our starters off, with 30 minutes to go. We pulled 5 of our starters off. So it's an interesting dynamic in the two different soccer cultures, where the Germans played their starters, lost, but then they're able to rationalize it, and they're not taking a hit to their psyche. Whereas I think as Americans, and it's ingrained in our culture, if you don't win, you're worth nothing, right? So
Yeah.
and I think
I think that's the positive. I think that's the positive here is that, to your point, I think it was how that last 30 seconds played out. That was the dagger, right? But I think the reality of it is also is, because I was reading up on that on the German piece, right, is that's the good, I feel like, where Germany's probably got to be scratching their head a little bit. Jegelsmann got to be probably scratching his head where, hey, we played with that mentality to go forward, play our best, our starters, and we lost, right? So we saw that, and then we also saw how Pochettino went about things, and then the rumor is and what Norway is scheduled to put out shortly when that lineup. I know we'll be tracking that lineup when it comes out momentarily. But yeah, I mean, that's where you got to feel better, I think, if you're the U.S., right? Hey, we wrapped up the group, have never done that before, and it was a luxury to be able to play, to basically make the changes that we did, even though the end result wasn't ideal. Could have made history, could have got 9 points out of 9, but it is what it is. So, Brian, your thoughts?
I mean, well, personally, I'm really kind of fed up with Hercules Gomez and just the sound bites for sound bites kind of deal with him. Um, and I think what Elias said about Germany, that's the difference between being a proper soccer culture, a soccer country, versus what we are here in the United States, and the value we put on winning versus the value we put on advancing. Like Poch said last night, if we win the round of 32 or we go to the round of 16, does anyone really care about the game against Turkey? You know, if we're playing Spain in the quarterfinals, are we going to sit here and say, well, we didn't beat Turkey and that's why we're not? You know, no, just shut up. You know, take a look at the game there. We came out aggressive as could be. Probably should have had 2 goals in the first 2 minutes. You know, you get the first goal from Austin Trusty, which is a great goal for him and a great confidence booster for him. I thought he played well at times. You know, he did what we asked him to do. They were aggressive. I think we had a second goal called back for offside. Obviously, I didn't get to hear what the explanation was, because that ball did come off a Turkish player, and I don't know what, I didn't get to hear it. I haven't rewatched it, but really and truly, you had the ball in the net twice in the first half. You had numerous opportunities in the first half, so you came out with an aggressive mindset, which I wasn't expecting with the lineup, with the wholesale changes that we had. We looked strong going forward. The second half, we picked it up another notch. We got the equalizer. We should have put the ball in the net a couple more times. Great save by the Turkish keeper, and a couple of opportunities where we didn't pull the trigger. I have no complaints about how we played. Obviously, giving up a goal in the 98th minute is not ideal, but granted, this is
You have zero complaints on how we played that first half.
I thought
you have zero complaints. That's what you're saying. Because I thought that huge difference between the second half and the first half, personally.
well, the first.
Right.
I mean,
And here's the other question. Here's what I thought about last night. What I thought about too was us getting that goal in the first 3 minutes yesterday. Did it somehow work against us too, where we kind of, where that group let their guard down? It's like, okay, here we go again. It's like business as usual. I did, ironically, because we gave up 2 in a span of 15 minutes after that, which I felt like we could have obviously done much better.
I think we did, but I think once we gave up the goal, we kind of came right back into the game. We kind of picked it up. There was very roller coaster in that first half. We score the goal, we're up on a high, then we give up the goal, we're down. We came back, have the goal called back, then we give up the goal. So very roller coaster there. To say I don't have any complaints, obviously you're going to pick out individual moments of the game and individual plays and individual players. I was not happy with. I was disappointed with the way Tim Weah played. Wasn't overly impressed with Brandon Aronson. I would have liked to seen Gio be a little bit more involved in the game in the first half. But if you take the whole game as a whole, we come out of the game no injuries. We come out of the game no cards, no suspensions, and we got and the big picture is now is Bosnia on Wednesday night.
Right, Mike?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key for me, right? You guys are the coaches. I'm just a clown here. But, coming out of the game, no cars, no injuries, none of that kind of stuff, right? That is what it is. And just from a fan perspective and someone who knows the game a little bit, but not a lot, right? When you saw all of the wholesale changes that were made in the starting 11, it was, hey, high on hopes. You hope it goes really well, but lower on expectations because you know the reality of playing Turkey. And honestly, that game has a totally different feeling if Turkey doesn't make a mess out of their first 2 matches. So, it was great to watch. It was a lot of fun. I thought the first half left a lot to be desired, but there was a lot of fight in the second half, which I thought was positive.
Yeah, and let's be real. Let's be honest. Probably if Turkey shows a tenth of the fight in that match they did yesterday versus Australia or Paraguay, totally different, right? As you said, right? So And you can tell how much it meant to them, right, when they got that third goal in the waning moments, right? Because you thought that they just punched their ticket to the World Cup final, right? So because you knew we were going to get their best in terms of they had to save face on some level, right? Because to go back to Turkey, 0-3, right, a big old bagel,
Yeah,
with no goals, I think would have you just been. It was already shocking that they didn't qualify, but yeah, to go down to lose three straight, I think for them would have been the ultimate.
Well, they earned the first round bye in the Cancun Cup coming up, so by that's why they were so excited about that goal. They get that first round bye in Cancun, so
yeah. I just I go back. We kind of talked about it a little bit yesterday. Like, so either Turkey's not very good, and we should have beat them last night, and we lost to a bad team, or Turkey is really good, and our B team. If you go and look at the match reports, it is a dead even game in every statistic,
Right.
right? And I mean, and I think that's separating, as a coach versus fan. As a fan, you want the win at the end, but as a coach, you're looking at performance. And your backups, all even with playing out of position, with not having rhythm, with having adversity, with maybe playing poor. Some of those players played, below maybe the expectations. You played them to a dead even game. And yes, there was the probably 20 minutes where it looked like Turkey was going to run away with it. But do we not think that in the knockout rounds there's going to be one of those quarters, right? We've kind of started to talk about the game in quarters, where one of these good teams is going to have the run of play. You know what I mean? So I mean, I don't. I just think in general, there's a lot of overreact. It's overreaction Friday today. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I think the big one too was what really stood out to me, and I had been saying this for people have been saying this, not just me, but what was asked of. I mean, McKinney obviously shined, but that said, it's hard to replicate what Tyler Adams does in that midfield. Right, the moment you take him out, it just is. And I
Yep.
think it's not until don't have him there that you really start to realize how he pieces all of that together. The stuff he does the stuff he does in front of the back line, right? That just when you try to ask, who was it, I think it was Berhalter, right, in that same spot. It's just he's not gonna. It's to be fair to Berhalter, he's not gonna be able to replicate that. So that's the tough part. So when we looked at when the team the roster was announced, right, 10 defenders, but yet our midfielders we felt like was like, man, we could have used another one or two possibly. I get it, some injuries, some people didn't make the cut, didn't make the roster, but still, I mean, I think as a whole, certain players, we talk about the lack of wing, just visibility whatsoever. Tim Weah, I think, is also struggling. I think he's struggling with confidence also, right? I think that's a big one with Tim. And then, Pepe could have looked far better. I thought he was going to have a couple of chances to break away there, but wasn't meant his night. But the positive, though, there was still a lot of positive. You talked about the breakdown, and we did still see some of that mentality in terms of the fight back when we dug ourselves a hole. Players that shined or players that surprised you in a positive sense in that game last night. Anybody?
Yeah, I think Berhalter, the technique he had on that goal was unreal. We've seen it time and time again in this World Cup where somebody takes that shot and it's going way over. But I hate to give him his flowers because I'm not such a big fan of him. But man, he did a great job and put that one on frame. I thought he played well. I think circling back real fast on what Ramos was saying, if you take your fan hat off and you put your coaching hat on, like what do you want to get out of that game? And for me, I would want to get, can I use any of these guys if I have to? If we hit up against an opponent where I've got to change up and I've got to put some different guys in, or we have an injury, or we have a suspension on a card, what guys can I use? And I think he got his answers last night with that. And I think shockingly enough for us, Weah was not one of those names that I think you could use because I expected much more out of him. But no, I think Berhalter had a great game. I think McKinney played well. Trusty did okay. I hope his ankle's okay because that didn't look good at the end of the game.
Yeah, that's our one injury. That's our one injury concern, right?
Yeah, it looked nasty. I felt bad for Matt Turner because I don't think he necessarily played bad, but he got put in really bad situations, and
Right.
he deserves better than that. But
Yeah, yeah,
No.
yeah. I agree. I agree. I think that was the shocking part with Tim Weah, right? Because I felt like he would be one of our top four, top five to go to off the
Yeah.
bench,
Oh yeah.
I
and
think he
I'm
has to
not
play on the right.
correct.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, I
I
agree.
don't think he's a left winger where he's going to cut in and dribble you. And no, but just kind of with what Wes said, Weston McKinney I thought was huge. I think everyone, as we're kind of talking through this, you start to think about different angles and things like that. But everyone's talking about, oh, the U.S. has a lack of depth. Do they though? Right? If you lose a Malik Tillman or you lose a Tyler Adams, Weston McKinney last night proved that he can drop back and play in front of the back line. And now you can bring, we asked Berhalter to play the Tillman role or whatever. And so now, there are players, you have four really solid midfielders in the first 11. If you have one that goes out, if it's a front-footed player, you have players that can come in, like a Reyna or an Aronson or things like that can play in those roles where they're not being exposed the way they were last night, and you can still kind of protect that. And you have Serginho Dest who can drop into the back line, and so I think that there was a lot of talk about how his roster came out, and no, you don't have enough depth to put out two starting 11s. But I think there's enough there that if you have one or two issues, that you can move things around and not have a big drop off. So, and I think that we saw Trusty play well. Berhalter played well. He can play in that number 10 spot and give you some things. He's not going to be a number 6 like they were asking him to play. McKinney has been great as that free 8. Where he's running in between the lines, but he can also drop in and shield the back four and do it, at a high level. So I think that what he also got out of last night was maybe some extra, tools in the toolkit. Even though maybe he got a lot of no's on does this work? He got the answer no on a lot of those. I think he did get a few yeses on can I do this and this be okay? And I think that's really useful going into the knockout stages. So
Yeah. Yeah, and another big positive was we ended up getting what probably amounted to, when it was all said and done, about 40 minutes for Pulisic, right? Looked
and,
good.
and he looked fantastic.
Looked good. Yeah.
He looked great. He looked sharp. He looked explosive. He looked better than, fitness wise. I'm not comparing him player wise, but fitness wise, like he looked better than like Lamine Yamal did coming in, from a fitness perspective. Obviously they're two completely different players, but he did not seem to be bothered at all by the injury.
Yeah. Hoping he's feeling good today, man. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we finally got to see, I got to give credit to a positive, right? How about to my man Zendejas, who took one right in the hinterlands and got right back up, man. He got right back up.
He did. He was like, I'm not coming off this field. I finally got on it.
So I was like, wow. I was like, I'd probably still be in bed if I took that shot. But yeah. So I would have loved to have seen him sooner. I felt like when he got in Dest, it was kind of the point. It was the point of no return, probably just a little too late, right? But it is what it is. Still a lot of positives. The ultimate question, my real main take is, from his perspective, right, is keeping that, because I'm sure the message that they're getting from him and the coaching staff, right, the group is, hey, it's like, hey, we sealed up the group. We're on to, right, kind of a line from Belichick. We're on to Bosnia, right? So how do they begin preparing for that? And no drop off in terms of what I liked about them was their spirit, right? When we had the other goal scorers, right? How they genuinely fight for each other, are there for each other. That part is not questioned, right? But the momentum piece, the revitalization piece, regenerate, how do they get ready now for, I think, a Bosnia group that the casual, if you will, is probably just because they don't see the name as Germany, Spain, France, Argentina. It's like, oh yeah, we should walk over, right? So how do we handle probably the first, when was the last time in a group stage match, in a knockout round, that we were the prohibitive favorite, right? So how do we handle that?
2002 against Mexico. We knew we were going to win that game.
Yeah, that is not. Hey,
That is not true.
I knew from the moment we beat Mexico we were going through. I knew it.
You don't work in Vegas though. You don't work
sitting at a bar in Jeonju. I knew it right then and there. Hey, we're through to the quarterfinals, boys. This is easy money
and
here.
This is why you are the head coach for Mercenary FC. But
Absolutely.
my point is, there was no way in hell that the U.S. was favored versus Mexico going into that 0-2 matchup, right? I agree with you full-heartedly.
Maybe not in your books, but my books.
I agree. No, I agree. No, we're not talking about your books. We're talking about just the general favorite, right? So how do we handle that, right? That's the thing, right? Because we're expected to win, and we're on home soil, right? So that's the thing. How do they progress and move on to that? So, any final thoughts so we can wrap this up, guys?
No, Norway did rest almost their entire starting 11. It's
10.
official.
10 out of the 11, including the goalkeepers resting.
Is it out?
Yep.
It's out.
It's
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
France,
Someone should fire their coach too, for crying out loud. He doesn't want to win.
So what
Yeah.
is the thought? We talked about it briefly. I know I dropped a note in the chat. What are you thinking there, right? With the group, with the group at stake still, with something to clearly play for there. If you're their coach, what's the thought process there?
I think 4 days rest. 4
Yeah.
days rest.
The rest is one. I've got another unconventional one you think about too. You know that if you're going to go toe to toe with France against their best, like, where is your confidence level as a team right now? If he goes toe to toe with his starting lineup and they end up not winning that game or even get embarrassed in that game, where's their confidence level going into the knockout rounds? Whereas if he rotates right now and his starters sit and they go lose the game like they're supposed to lose the game, okay, we're not talking about anything, and they're not worried about it too because they're going to move on and go play. Who are they playing?
The Ivory Coast.
Ivory Coast. I'm going to that game. I would know. You're going to play the Ivory Coast, and your guys are all rested, and you're ready to go, and you avoid certain teams like you talked about, Hector, in our group on the other side of the bracket. Now you get to be where it's a little bit easier.
The Argentina. Let's call it the Argentina Invitational right now until otherwise.
Because really, who are you avoiding? You're avoiding the Netherlands. You're avoiding Germany. You're avoiding Spain. You're avoiding possibly Portugal. Like
The United States.
you're avoiding the United States. That's true. I mean, you would see them in a semifinal. So I don't know. I think in his mind, it's like we can pass off this one and let's just keep our confidence high and let's not roll out our starters and play in a tough, hard game. And then, like you said, Elias, turn around, you get 4 days of rest instead of less. So,
Yeah, I mean,
think
we'll
a
have to
squad
see.
like that, you don't have a whole lot of depth. I mean,
Right.
yes, their stars are stars, but I think beyond that, you have probably 18 players that would maybe get into some of these bigger teams, right? So, I think the 4 days is huge. I mean, and now you're going, where are they playing? They're playing that game in New York today?
Yeah, we're gonna look. No, not New York. It is in Boston.
In Boston. So now you're having to travel from Boston. So now that's another day, So I'm thinking this is probably a sports science recommendation, and the coach probably too is like, okay, that makes sense. And let's, again, it's the same idea we were just talking about.
Yeah.
If you go beat France and then get knocked out in the round of 32, because we know Holland has injury issues. He does. Like he has not really made it through even a whole Manchester City season. So Odegaard is the same way. So if you were to go out there and you beat France and you lose one of those two, and now you go and lose in the round of 32, who gives a crap if you beat France on the last match day? You know what I mean? So I think that.
I think it's apples and oranges in terms of France, because France could legitimately put out a second 11, right? With next to no drop off. France doesn't care. It's like whoever's in front of them, right? So I get it from that perspective. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because here's the other thing, right? Depending upon where Norway would fall on that side of the bracket, you got to be careful you don't position yourself to where maybe you end up playing Mexico in Mexico, right? Something like that on that side of the bracket. So just something to be said outside of Argentina, I guess. But then you have probably Brazil. We don't know yet if it's going to end up being Colombia or Portugal on that side of the bracket also. So some interesting stuff, but I mean, we'll see. I think now here's the devil's advocate piece, right? Because you'll have to look at, for example, from Norway's perspective, from Holland's perspective, the last time he will have played a match. And like I said, if they're banged up, then those are the things we don't know that we're not privy to.
Yeah.
But how long will they have gone now between their second group match and then round of 32 match? Is it going to end up being 12, 13 days? Is that too much? Because the devil's advocate piece is, so the touchline is reporting that Messi wants to play versus Jordan in the final group stage match. All right, because he wants to. This is 38-year-old or what 39-year-old now Messi, right? It will affect. He feels like it'll keep him sharp, and otherwise it would affect his match rhythm, right? So to each their own. And of course, we're talking about Messi, who's the exception to everybody. But that's kind of one of those things, right? When you start looking at the science, the strategy, what's behind it, and that's why I feel on some level they got to be looking at the strategy piece on, hey, can we avoid, if we can take an easier path, we can take an easier path, right? And that was one of the things that we were going to probably see, and we'll see more of this moving to this 48 team format with select third place teams going as well. So.
Yeah, and I think that was an important note. Like a lot of these players, they all feel differently on load management. Some, like Messi, I think Pedri's come out and said like he wants to play every game because he feels like the rhythm is important. But I know even some of my own athletes, like they would love a game off. They start to feel fatigue and they're like, I want a game off because then I'm not going to be at my best and whatever and this and that. And so I think that it's only the coach really knows the culture of their team and how they feel. And I would imagine, I doubt that he made that decision without talking to his leaders and his captains and what they felt. So, because I think that you've seen like Uruguay right now is like full on mutiny with Marcelo Bielsa. So, I think that these guys, I would imagine Poach had similar conversations maybe with some of the, Tim Ream. He probably talked to Tim Ream. Do you want to go? Do you not want to go? What do you think? It's ultimately the head coach's decision, but at that level, you have to get some sort of input, especially from your veteran players, especially from your star players. So.
Yeah, and that was the piece in the lineup I think that we weren't sure, right? Was we knew the four sitting on yellows, right? Who's now slate is clean, so that's another positive coming out of yesterday. But you take it out of their hands, right? Because in the end, we know players play, right? They don't know, they don't know if they're going to get to play in another World Cup. This is definitely Tim Ream's last, right? So we get that, but whether it was sitting a Ream, probably smart. Was it, sitting Dest? A couple of those were interesting, right? So, all right. So we're going to move on. We're going to go ahead. So we're going to look at, so here is who is in as of going into today. So we're up to 19 teams officially that have punched their ticket, either ones, twos, and select threes, which we're going to go over in a minute. So it's slowly filling up. Thoughts on this, guys?
I don't know that I want to play the Ivory Coast. I mean, they beat France to open up, in the warm-up games. They played Germany really well. I think they're a sleeper pick as well. They've got some good players in there. So, and then Ecuador, what a game yesterday.
House money, baby. House money.
I mean, they're playing with house money. I mean, and you could just see what it meant to everybody. And you saw the images of the coach running to his family. I think he posted something after the game talking about, this wasn't my win. This wasn't the team's win. This was the win for all the people. So, I thought that was a really powerful moment. And those two teams, I think out of the 6 that we added yesterday, those two are kind of dark horses for me.
Brian,
Yeah, I would.
Brian, what you got?
No, I think you've got some. Like we said, it's going to be the strong teams, the strongest teams getting in, and then you're going to see your couple of surprises. I think when we looked at groups, I don't think we saw Australia going into the round of 32. I don't think we saw South Africa going into the round of 32, like we said yesterday. I still think there's a couple more surprises left in this World Cup in the group stages. But like Ecuador and Ivory Coast, they're going to be extremely tough outs in this World Cup, and I think they've got a lot to say before this World Cup's over, depending on how the third place games go. But I said it yesterday. I think South Korea is going to be in some trouble getting through this group of the third place teams. I know we'll get to that in a minute, but there are some other teams that are going to sit there these next couple of days, on pins and needles, trying to figure out if they're going to get to extend their stay or they're going to be heading to the Cancun Cup.
Yeah, Wes, Mike, what do you guys got?
Well, yeah, I think I agree. I think Ecuador is a scary team to play. I don't know if I would want to play them. Australia is another one of those teams that's going to sit back and counter on you. And I mean, yesterday's game, I don't think anybody can watch that, if anybody was watching that with the U.S. playing. But I had it on another TV, and it just seemed like we're totally okay with keeping the ball in midfield, because if we both get a point, we're both gonna draw. We're both gonna get into the next round. So I don't know. Ecuador's scary. I really like the Brazil Japan matchup. I think that one's interesting when you start looking about who's matching up with who. Canada and South Africa, that is not a good game for Canada, and them not being able to play in Canada as well, having to come to the U.S. So it'd be interesting. And I don't think we would have said that about South Africa 2 weeks ago.
I know, man. I know. Can't figure them out, man.
I've offered my assistance to the Bafana Bafanas to help them defeat the people up north.
Yeah. Hey, there'll be 16 teams. There'll be 16 teams not on here, Brian, that I think will probably be ready, available for Mercenary FC's best. So, Mike, what do you got, buddy?
Just, some of the matchups that are going to be coming up pretty interesting. We were kind of talking about it last night on the chat, right? So, was it Netherlands and Morocco? I think we were talking about it as like, it's going to be a very interesting first round match, or round of 32 match. And then, fan perspective, it's awesome. Give me more of some of the good, right? And get some of these strong teams in here, and let's see what it looks like as it plays out.
Yeah, gotta admit, we should be broadcasting and live broadcasting is our chat. Our chat is off the chain. It's kind of at times goes off the rails, but then we get it back on. And Elias confessing to us his deep devotion and love and appreciation for Real Madrid last night. I really appreciate that as well. Really appreciate that as well. So, all right, so we move on. So,
I think I'm going to get burned at the stake now.
I know you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So, all right. So our third place standings going into today. So we have three that are fully punched their ticket. They're official, right? In Sweden, Ecuador, Bosnia, and Herzegovina. Now we know Bosnia is 100. It's 100% certainty that's locked in versus the U.S. on July 1st at Levi Stadium. Ecuador and Sweden still kind of interest. Ecuador, I think, sitting at, according to the Athletics bracket predictor, is up to, I think, 71% probability of, at this point, facing Mexico. So that's going to be an interesting one there in Azteca. And I haven't even looked up Sweden to see where they're at. So thoughts on these three that have, I know we just mentioned Ecuador. We're going to get into a lot more on Bosnia in our preview show later. But thoughts on maybe Bosnia and Sweden a little bit more, guys?
I think it's projected that Sweden's going to play the winner of Group I. So whoever wins today between France and Norway will probably play Sweden. I didn't see the exact percentages on that one, but it's
they'll be the third. Yeah, probably. I think you're right.
Yeah, but like I said, I think they said after yesterday's game, Scotland had like a 5% chance of getting into the round of 32. Algeria, we'll see what they do tomorrow. I believe Algeria plays tomorrow. But like I said, I'm the one that's not sold on South Korea. I think Cape Verde is going to get something today. I think Belgium's going to get some. I think Belgium's going to get a win over New Zealand today. And then, what does Senegal do today against Iraq? Are they able to? I believe they have Iraq today. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Iraq, Iran. I get them all confused. But I think Senegal, can they get I think they said if they can get a 2-goal win over Iraq, then they will jump over South Korea. So I think South Korea is in a lot of trouble. Scotland, I love them all here. You can go start drinking Edinburgh back out of beer, and give Boston plenty of time to restock everything. But it's interesting now that you're starting to see, again, some teams here who don't normally have that chance to advance. Getting to advance. I mean, Ecuador hadn't been in the knockout stages since 2006, and then you have teams like Algeria, Cape Verde, Congo, Senegal, teams you don't normally see in that. After the African nations are really starting to show out, and they have the opportunity to get in that stage and then really show out when they get into the knockout round.
Yeah, big shout out messaging on here. Ken Murphy is in here following the show. Ken, really appreciate you. Thanks for the message. I know you've been following us for a while, going back to particularly the Inside Texas High School Soccer days. So thank you so much, buddy, for all you do. in support of Texas high school soccer. But so any addition, I feel, because I think the thing to watch, I think we're in agreement. You're going to need 3 points minimum, but I feel like in the end that cutoff, I feel like Croatia, South Korea are kind of floating right in there. That -1 goal differential, I think, is going to be the minimum for the cutoff, right? Probably. So, what does Congo do? What do we see from Senegal? A Senegal squad that's kind of also maybe not to the extent of Uruguay, but kind of a little bit in shambles behind the scenes, right? So, and then we have, of course, Brian's Cape Verde, so which I would love to see just shake things up in there, so as well. So, any additional thoughts on this, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Senegal, I think they can win 2-0 and they're going to get up to -1. Croatia has Ghana. So if Croatia wins, where does that put Ghana in the third place standings?
They're on 4 points, so they got to be in.
They'd be on
Yeah.
4 points.
Yeah.
They'd be on 4 points.
Depending on the score of the match will depend the goal differential.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, then
That's another squad I would not want to see, man. Ghana's playing well.
Yeah.
So that can shake up things a lot, because if Croatia wins, then they go and they, that knocks out right away Scotland if Croatia wins. So Senegal can probably win by 2. Cape Verde has Saudi Arabia, who has not really impressed. Belgium, you would imagine that they're favorites to win their game and get to 5 points. And then who's in that group would go to third place, and how many points are they at? So I think what's interesting is it's not even just these 12 teams.
Correct.
You're now looking at who is in second place and how could they fit into the third place standings as well, as these groups kind of, finish out here. So, but yeah, I mean, if I was South Korea, if I was Scotland, all the teams that have already played all their games besides the ones on 4 points, I don't know that you feel very good about getting in.
Yeah. That's the interesting piece, fighting scale here of current number 2s, and that's probably what we should be looking at, current number 2s that are in jeopardy as well. So
Yeah, I was just going to say it adds a good dimension too, right? Other than the previous where it was just 1 and 2 at every group is getting through. There's a lot more dynamics at play, and whoever wants to go through option 47 for us and explain
Option
that whole
47
thing from the U.S.
Brian, break that down for us.
Okay, so apparently FIFA ran 48 different scenarios based on the third place teams, based on different point totals and everything. And in 47 of the 48 different scenarios, the U.S. would play Bosnia in this scenario here. Option 47, the one time it came off is when Senegal was the team that played there. So option 47 was the 0.1% of the United States playing Senegal. If Senegal got to 3 points and then got over, I believe they had to get over Scotland, over Algeria, over Belgium, and then over South Korea. Like those 4 teams there, as I was reading it. But option 47 T-shirts will be available soon. We'll get those put up on the Red, White, and Crew podcast for sale, guys.
There you go.
Is that still on the table?
No, it is no longer on the table. As of last night, it's no longer on the table.
So those are like those option 47 T-shirts are like, those T-shirts that they print like, for the Super Bowl, and they send the losing teams T-shirt winners to those third world countries. So these are going to be really popular in the Cook Islands, I would imagine.
They're going to be really popular in the Cook Islands. They're also going to be real popular at Tasco this November. Everyone's going to want option 47. So
Yeah. Option 47. Let's see if we can get UAL on board too. So, all right, let's move on.
I don't know. I see Senegal with that real fast, Hector. I see Senegal knowing that you need to get at least three goals, win by 3 in a game where you can.
You see them chasing it?
I could see them going after it. I mean, I could see that when you've got to get 3. I don't know. That would throw chaos into everything. I think the other thing that would throw chaos into everything, and I would love it, is if Spain and Uruguay would tie today and Cape Verde wins and goes to the top of the group. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I think they would still default to second because they have to win by so many. Well, what was it, Elias? How many goals? Was it 4?
They need to score. They need to win by 4.
Yeah.
So if they win by 4. It's
Yeah.
doable.
But I think with Senegal, and you've got two strikers up top, and Mane and Jackson, who I think they're going to be hungry for goals today, and I think Mane is going to be the key part of that one, leading that front line. So I see them getting at least 2 goals. If they get 2 goals, they will go over South Korea. That's what I was reading this morning, that they will jump South Korea. I don't know if they would jump Croatia if they all ended up tied on the same way, but I know they were. I was told that they would jump South Korea if they get equal goal differential.
Got it. Yeah, I mean that's what adds the spice. This is why I was calling this the relegation battle, right? Because this adds spice to. You have some teams like Wes just mentioned in Senegal, like they're going to have to chase it. You have some teams that might be sitting. I mean, what does Belgium put out there, right? Do they fully expect to advance and will rest a couple of players? Not wholesale changes, but you're going to have some teams who are clearly sitting players, and then you got some teams that have pretty much already clocked out, right? They still have to play another match, but they already have Cancun on their mind, right? So how do all of this is coming together, and then you got second place teams out there looking over their shoulder, knowing that some of these results from some of these current third place teams is going to have an impact on them and their group as well. So fascinating stuff as we make our way through match day 3. So
I mean, if Belgium somehow gets a draw today, 3 points and a 0 goal differential, they suddenly jump South Korea, Algeria, and Scotland.
oh yeah, because that
So
would
they
put
could
them at
literally
5
play for a draw today and be in a good position.
Yeah. All right. So, all right, last piece. We're going to go ahead and second to last piece, but so today's schedule, first 2 matches. So 3:00, we were talking about this earlier. So a little bit different, kind of odd today. So we have kind of a extended break between our first set of matches and second set of matches. Typically they're in 3-hour increments, but all times Eastern here. So 2 p.m. Central Time, we have Norway and France, which will be kicking off pretty much right after we get off of here. Senegal and Iraq. Let's take a look at those 2 first. Elias, we'll start with you. Thoughts on these 2, given what we know, particularly with Norway?
I mean, I think that now Kylian Mbappe is going to go break the record. I mean, it seems to be lining up perfectly for him to get as many goals as possible. So, you have a full strength France team. It looks like I think they're making maybe 1 change in midfield. But I think France now wins this pretty comfortably. Maybe Norway makes a game of it, but as soon as the first one goes in for France, the backups for Norway. This is not the game last night where, maybe the USA second teamers thought that they could still compete with Turkey. I don't think any, and even though they're professionals and we can say all that, like psychologically, I just think if they trail, especially if they trail early, this game could get out of hand. Senegal, Iraq, I think that you saw it yesterday with Ecuador where they changed the intentions of their team and it made them play better. Ecuador, they were playing with Hincapié almost as a left winger. Both outside backs were going. It gave them a different dimension that I think now they'll go into the knockout rounds, and that's why they're so dangerous. So maybe we could see something similar with Senegal today, where they're not so much, and not that they're a low block and counter team, but I don't think that you would consider them a super expansive team either, right? They're probably mid block, kind of, keep it tight. We're gonna hit you in our moments, but today I think they're gonna really open it up. I think you're gonna see really, really expansive football. With the outside backs going up and like I think Heyman and Wes said, like if they could run the score up on this, especially if they get 2 and they smell blood in the water. I mean, I could see them going and getting 3, 4, 5 because they know that the goal differential is so big. So
Right. What else, guys? In order the first 2.
No, I agree. France by 1 million.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting piece too is what does France look like? We talked about it. I think who was it? Rafa, I think mentioned it in our previous one, right? No Deschamps on the sideline in the dugout, right? So what is kind of, yes, they're professionals, but then again, is there, do they look different at all in terms of mentality, right? So interesting to see. But I think,
What if that Norway-France game is 0-0 60 minutes in?
correct.
And now all of a sudden Norway can say, okay, let's go throw Holland on, let's go throw a couple guys on, let's go for the win here. Can Norway keep this game 0-0? And that's a big ask with 10 new players on the
Right.
field. Is that can they keep it 0-0 until the 60th minute, and then maybe roll the dice and see if they can go win the group.
Yeah. And that could be part of the strategy too, right? Let's throw you know what to the wall and see what sticks, right? And if we're still in this game at that point, then hey, that's.
I could see it even if they're tied at half, you bring on a couple of them.
You think a half? You think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're tied at halftime and now you have a chance to go win the group, I mean, why not? But
Yeah. Okay. So our next two, slated for 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. I think the big one that a lot of us don't know quite what we're going to get. We could see a multitude of results coming out of this one. Uruguay versus Spain, and then also Cape Verde trying to make history here versus Saudi Arabia. Thoughts on these two? And that one, the Cape Verde, Saudi Arabia, will be there here in Texas, in Houston. So, thoughts on these two guys?
I think.
No,
Go ahead.
I know. I think I'm really excited to see what Cape Verde does tonight. I know it'd be huge for them to get into the round of 32. But I think the Spain Uruguay game, that game is just with everything that's being reported going wrong with the Uruguay team and the camp and players revolting against Bielsa and Bielsa revolting back against them. This is that kind of game where I think if Spain gets a goal early, it could be a 5 or 6-0 rout. Very similar to what the U.S. did to Uruguay in November. But it could also be something that kind of rallies the team around and says, okay, hey, look, we can bond together. And you just never put something. You just can't put much past a Bielsa-led squad, even if half the players are revolting. I think he's, Elias says it a lot, but I think Bielsa is one of the best managers in the world with his tactics, and I think he's going to have something different for Spain tonight. We'll see what happens. It'll be fun to watch those two games.
I think where it's being played is interesting too, with the altitude they're going to be at Guadalajara. What does that do? What does that make those teams look like? Because Spain was where? Spain was in Atlanta, and they were playing inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be interesting. Yeah, that's one of my hometowns, man, where I grew up for a good bit in Guadalajara. So it'll be. And what is the fanfare like there too? Does it lean more Uruguay or more partial to Spain? That'll be the other interesting one. So
I think you're going to see a few of those Lamine Yamal, whatever his name is, his jerseys. You might see a couple of them.
His name is Ryan.
Lamine Yamal, sir.
He goes by Ryan, guys. I don't know if you knew that or not.
All right, Mike, you got anything on these two?
Nah, not really. Just move on.
Yeah. All right. And then our nightcaps slated for tomorrow, technically, right? So 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 o'clock Central Time. New Zealand and Belgium and Egypt. That Egypt-Iran matchup, man, really intrigued to see that. Really intrigued to see that. So thoughts on these two?
I can't wait to watch that Pride Cup tonight between Egypt and Iran and the protests that are going to be going.
That's going to be
It's going to be fantastic.
Does that like just side rail this match completely, right? That'll be an interesting one.
It's interesting. I feel like Iran has to pick some type of issue in every game that there's a reason why everybody hates them.
I mean, but this was brought out long before. This was brought out like as soon as
it was.
the group were. So this is something that's been long standing, and I mean, Iran's going to find something to complain about, like you said, Wes. But you might see more action in the stands than you do on the field tonight in this one there. But then I'm interested to see what does Belgium do tonight. When their backs are against the wall, can they put together one solid performance and get the opportunity to beat New Zealand tonight and get into the round of 32?
Yeah, that's the last thing I think they'll appreciate, right? Everybody on social media calling this match the Pride Cup. Yeah, I'm sure they'll appreciate that.
They're going to love that. No, I think Belgium, New Zealand, though, I mean, we talk about it. Everyone's thinking, oh, Belgium's just going to get the points. But, guys, Belgium has rolled out in every game where we expected them to get the points.
Correct.
So, I don't. Does anything change tonight for them? Do they still look old and out of sorts? And I feel like if they try to take the foot off the gas tonight, they're going to be in trouble because New Zealand's not just going to lay down. And New Zealand hasn't looked awful I mean,
No.
even against Egypt, they put a goal in, and I mean, it was just late that they gave it up. But I thought the New Zealand and Iran game was actually one of the better ones too, watching them go back and forth.
That one is what, in Vancouver, right? So that'll be
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, be interesting. So, Elias, Mike, thoughts on these last two?
Is everybody feeling that Belgium just pulls it all together and looks like the Belgium that people maybe expected going in?
Yeah,
They
I'm
haven't
just
yet.
curious. I'm just curious to see what their lineup for this match looks like. I think that'll tell us a lot. But
I think on 2 points,
before-
I don't know that on 2 points you can leave anything to chance. I think if you're on three, okay, we play for a tie. But on two, I think you have to go full strength. I mean, you get Jeremy Joku back. He changes the look of that team. How do they get some more balance in midfield though? Because De Bruyne just can't run anymore. I mean, his legs are gone.
right. That's the problem. Is their age. That's the problem.
Yeah, and so like it's just it's all, and it seems like they have a million left wingers but no right wingers. So now you have players playing on the right hand side that aren't really comfortable there. You don't really have a true number nine. In the past you had Romelu Lukaku, but I mean the man is like 50 years old and 600 pounds now. So it's it's an interesting team. I do think that they are one of those teams that is relying on their name to maybe get some results in the beginning, and where they get a little bit maybe more respect from teams that they necessarily have earned for their current form. I mean, yeah, that game in Seattle, from a human perspective, is going to be quite. There may be some fireworks there. It's going to be. You have two, yeah. I mean, there's probably a reason there's not a whole lot of those, Egyptian and Iranian populations in Seattle. So it's going to be interesting up there for sure.
Man, we turned into a politics podcast all of a sudden. I love it. I love it. So trying to tap dance around those things. No, I appreciate it. Good job, guys. So yeah, that does it as we start to wrap up here. So one last piece that I wanted to get to. So we do have breaking news, right, courtesy of U.S. Soccer, that they have offered Mauricio Pochettino an extension running through the 2030 World Cup. Early preliminary reports is Mauricio Pochettino is only interested if he can add the director of Mercenary FC to his coaching staff and Brian Heyman. So thoughts on that, Brian?
We have I have spoken with Poch. We're good friends from our Chelsea days. He knows I want to be the manager of the Cook Islands, and he's going to help me get there and maybe get some experience, and then maybe come in after the Gold Cup and kind of be his left hand man. Considering his right hand guy's been with him for 20 years, I'll be the left hand. We'll be all right. But like I tell everyone, I go, money talks, everything else walks.
Yeah, what's his name again? I always forget his name. The little guy that's been with him. Martinez, Ramirez,
Something like.
Yeah. But anyway, so thoughts on this? Obviously, still preliminary. We got to get through this World Cup, but just kind of comes out as surprising news, even though reports show that conversations have been going on for a while. But everyone has every indication to believe that Poch wants to jump back to the European club scene. But what do you think? You think there's anything there, or no?
I think that this tournament is maybe. I think if you offered him this extension before the tournament, he's like, I'm going to go back to European club football. But as this thing has kind of, unraveled, I mean, I don't know if y'all saw the little podcast or not the little video clip of him talking about them listening to country music, and he's like, I love me some Luke Combs and Ella Langley, and I think he's starting to really embrace the American culture, and I think he's realizing a little bit too that it's not so different than maybe his own beliefs, and I think he's a good fit where he's gonna win, and he's like, I want to win, and so, but 6 years is a long time in international football. However, he does seem cutthroat enough to where he's not going to be one of those guys that keeps guys around for sentimental value. I think that he's going to be willing to, if Pulisic started playing like trash tomorrow, I think he would be the first one to drop him. So I do think that there's a little bit of that in him. that maybe could make it, but it is a dicey proposition. You know, we talked about like Vicente Del Bosque, you know, like he won a World Cup and a Euro in back to back, and they're like, yeah, let's give him one more, and it was one cycle too many, right? I mean, they came in, they were leggy because he was trying to. I think they even asked him. They asked him why or what he did. He's like, I wanted to give those guys a chance to go and defend their title, and when he should have been the one to, you know. And I know this is sacrilegious for as a Barca guy. Xavi should not have started those games, right? You know, his legs were gone at that point, so. It's an interesting dynamic that you have to have the right person to be able to give them multiple cycles.
Well, remember, so a couple of things. Remember, today, post U.S. men's national team loss, you can trash Barcelona players all you want. Okay, so we established that. But yeah, no, I think the other thing is probably Arch is probably going to want Freddie on his coaching staff, man, as much as he's buying into U.S. culture. But yeah, I think the question, but you mentioned it, Elias, I think the question becomes, does he, because sometimes in these extended two cycles, right, sometimes the message gets old, right, from the coach, but then we're all, you know, obviously Michael had mentioned, with the exception of him, we're all coaches here, you inevitably, you get attached to your players, right? You get attached to them, right? So that's the scary part, right? That's the difficult part. And when you start looking at it potentially encroaching on development, right, of your up and coming players as well. So thoughts on this from your perspective, Wes? Is there anything here? What do you think?
No, I think talking on that point right there, I think it's great while we're all high school coaches because we get forced to release some of our guys. Like we don't have to, we're not allowed to hold on to them, so we got to worry about the development. So that's kind of, it is an issue, you know. I mean, I look at that with Tim Ream. Does he like Tim Ream too much to keep him around longer than he needs him? Or even some of those other guys. I'm okay with him going another 4 years because I feel like he wasn't on that full 4-year cycle before, because he's only had 2 years so far leading up. So I'm okay if we go another 4 years. That's fine. I like what I'm seeing. The other element I've seen is he has taught the American public so much about the game of soccer already, with his interviews, with different things he said, and you could see like the way that things have changed. Because leading up to this World Cup, we all talked about whenever U.S. plays on home soil, are they really playing on home soil? Because every game is always an away game, but that has changed. And I think part of the documentary we watched, where he was crying in the dressing room after that game because he was like, you guys should never have to experience being on home soil and not having the fans behind you. So I think he's changed some of the culture of U.S. soccer in that, and I think he's going to continue to do that. So it may be good for him. It may be good for us, just to keep him around.
Well, I mean, we'll see about the home soil stuff. I mean, we've all watched
True.
qualifying and all that stuff over the years. I mean, as you said, they show up, and even on home soil, the fans are outnumbered significantly.
Yeah, and he hasn't gone through the circus that is CONCACAF qualifying, right? So what would that look like? That would be interesting as well. So,
And then,
right?
is
I
it
think-
confirmed? Oh, sorry.
But I think what he's got coming up, he's got next year. You know, he's got the Nations League starting in September, going through March. He's got the Gold Cup coming up in June. Then the next year, you know, potentially Copa America here in the States. So he's got a lot of big opportunities. So even if he stays through just Copa America and goes through a 4-year cycle with the team, and then decides after 2 years, hey, you know, there's some opportunities in Europe. You know, if he puts us in the quarterfinals at this World Cup, and then he takes us maybe to the semifinals of Copa America or somewhere deep in that tournament, you know, then he gets the chance to ride out when he wants to ride out, instead of being like a Greg Berhalter, where he got rode out because he needed to be rode out. You know, I think this is his opportunity, and I think it's different than the situations he's had in club opportunities, where, you know, PSG and Tottenham and, you know, Chelsea all just kind of forced him out. You know, this gives him an opportunity to go out on his own terms, if and when he wants to go out. You know, he may say at the end of this World Cup, hey, look, I took the U.S. to the quarterfinals, I took the U.S. to the semifinals. You know, now my level is high and my expectations are high and my value's high. So, you know, will the U.S. Soccer Federation pony up the money to keep him for 4 years, or will he have suitors over in Europe? And the issue is going to be not the summer, because a lot of those jobs are already filled. It's going to be December when Tottenham fires their manager again, and Manchester United fires their manager again, and Real Madrid fires Mourinho again, and Barca gets tired of Hansi Flick, and the next big name is the sexy name who just took the U.S. to the semifinals or the quarterfinals of the World Cup, is Pochettino. Can they bring him over?
Well, he would never coach Barcelona because he was an Espanyol guy, and
Yeah.
I think he's made it. I'm just
Money-
gonna throw that out there.
Just like
Hey,
Mercenary, just like
I
in
loved
Mercenary
how I
FC.
loved how there was no mention. I loved how there was no mention of Chelsea in there. By the way, as far as
Well,
fire.
we normally fire our manager in May or in April or May. You know, that's when that normally happens. So
I hope you guys do right by Xabi Alonso and keep him, because that's a big gain for you guys. It
I
really
do
is.
too. You know, I mean, I know that I'm next in line for a 2-year contract over at Chelsea, just so they can fire me after 3 months and I can get paid out for the next year and 7 months. So I'll be happy with that.
That is pending the Premier League's option 47 clause, sir.
Yeah,
So that's
option
okay.
47, guys.
Mike, you had something
Coming
else?
soon.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, with him potentially having another shot at major tournament, Copa America on home soil, and kind of, see if you can recreate and duplicate what's going on right now, right? That I could see what the appeal would be for that, but then all bets are off after that, right? As you said, Brian, you write your own ticket after that if you do well.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, this is going to come down to money, right? I mean, if they throw a massive contract at him, it's going to be hard. It's going to be, is the take of U.S. soccer to, hey, make him tell us no, right? Does it come down to that, right? So, and we just throw more money, more investors, all that stuff at him to where he has to really like sit down and like think about it.
Hey, Hector, I've also heard that Chick-fil-A is also in on the contract negotiations. They're going to offer him a big amount of chicken nuggets and money, because apparently he's a huge fan of Chick-fil-A.
Lifetime supply. So, hey, what if he runs the table, man? What if he makes what does it look like? What does this decision look like if he just, okay, dare I say run the table, but they make a quarterfinal run, they make a semifinal run, shock the world and defeat somebody, whoever, probably Spain in that quarterfinal, right? Or we FAFO and find ourselves in the World Cup final somehow. Yes, I said it, right? So, who knows what that looks like at that point, right? To where we can't let this guy go. And then here's the other thing, Elias. What if, given the situation of what kind of Wes had mentioned and Brian had mentioned, what if he, no disrespect towards him whatsoever, it's not meant like that at all, but what if he kind of becomes we'll take it on a year-to-year basis, and he kind of really becomes a placeholder for the next year and a half, until maybe, we talked about Pep laying in the wings there a year and a half down the road, right? And then he kind of hands him the baton. We've seen stranger things. Could even that be a possibility?
I mean, yeah, I think you could see. I would imagine he at least signs a 2-year contract. I don't know that he really commits to 4 years, but I mean, at this point of the coaching cycle, I mean, there are no big jobs open in Europe. I know he was in line for AC Milan, but did they hire that job?
Yeah.
They did. So
Not a great one, but they hired it.
yeah, I mean, there's not big jobs open. I don't see him necessarily jumping to another national team after this, just because of the resources and the pay that he's getting from the USA. And I think, something that we take, for granted is the grind of a club season. You're playing a game every 3 days. There is and I mean, that's exhausting. And you see it with Pep and why Pep's leaving Manchester City after 10 years. You saw, these great coaches, and especially ones that live off of the passion, that it takes a lot out of you. So I think a national team job is a little bit less demanding because you're playing once, 2 games in every 2 months or whatever, however, you really line it up there. And then, to go through a Copa America, maybe on home soil again, like that would be, and then now, you bring in the next person and you can say, a year from now, I don't think that this conversation will really be solved, until, next summer. I think next summer we'll kind of know, is Poach going to be leading the next charge or is it going to be somebody else?
Yeah, whoever the next coach is going to have a significant say on the development. Yes, we have technical directors, but a significant say with the 2028 Olympics coming up. So they'll have a significant say on the developmental side as it feeds into, whether we're hosting Copa, we're a part of it, right? The Nations League, everything that we talked about into qualifying for 2030. So, Wes, you
But
had something,
also, but
or
also,
Brian?
how much control is the federation going to give him? Um, in regard, you've got Uncle Don Garber sitting there, just trying to get his fingers involved in everything. How much bureaucratic red tape is he going to run through? Is it worth him doing that? And then I think the other question is, does the United States have someone lined up to replace Potch? If Potch was to say, "This is it for me, I'm done," do we have, does the Federation really have a short list of guys that they really think is going to be quality enough to replace him?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know that you really have an American coach that's really ready to take it. So you would almost have to go, you
There's
know.
one in San Jose, young kid named Bruce Arena. I think he'd be perfect for the. No, just joking.
But
I
I
almost
think
said that
that,
with a straight face.
yeah, I mean, I think that, like Hector said, if they make a quarterfinal run, I mean, and then let's say, the federation starts to put down all these, whatever, they start to create more red tape for Poach. Poach is going to go and people are going to call him and they're going to be like, "Hey, is this job worth it?" And he's going to tell them stay away from that job. So if the USA is smart, they've seen what happens when you kind of turn over control and you kind of go and break the mold, and if they try to go back to that, I just think that they would be dooming a
Mhm.
federation to kind of continue mediocrity, right? Where we're part of the conversation, but we're not really in the conversation. We're kind of around it. But I think this World Cup, the U.S. is the conversation right now. I mean, even with all the great stars, I mean, this is a World Cup about our national team and our country. So, and I think that that's really important to keep that going.
And floating in the back of his mind somewhere is one of the narratives that have clearly stood out in this World Cup in terms of watching how the U.S. plays is his style and how he wants to play is clearly more suited for international soccer, right? Particularly tournaments, right? That was the knock on his teams at Chelsea and particularly at Tottenham was that how he wants to play. They typically run out of steam in the last 5 to 7 matches in a 38 season. Here, where you can kind of pick your pockets, you can pick your little moments, right? And then certain camps, certain development cycles. I think it's a huge difference, right? And you can tackle one tournament at a time. So yeah, interesting. I know he's got to be thinking that. I know he's got to realize that. But if U.S. can, I would imagine they're going to say, "Hey, make him have to tell us no," right? In terms of what they offer him. So yeah, we'll see. So any final thoughts on that, guys? Anything else? No. All right. So that is going to do it for episode 11 of the Red, White, and Crew podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate everybody. Again, like, rate, subscribe. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Red, White, Crew Pod, as well as on the 50/50 pod. Since we are part of the 50/50 podcast network, you can also find us on Twitter X at 50_50 pod, as well on Instagram at 50_50 podcast. And then you can also find the YouTube channel at the 50_50 podcast. Go on there, like, rate, subscribe, like this video, subscribe, and you'll catch everything we do since everything we do is live. And then the audio version of the podcast, whatever your preferred podcast platform is, go on there, give us a rating as well, like, rate, subscribe there. As this podcast, we have long-term plans for this podcast, so we're not going anywhere post the World Cup. So really appreciate all of you. Coaches, thank you guys so much. Mike, finally great to have you on here. Really appreciate you. So final thoughts in terms of we will be having our next show, which will be probably either our preview show, maybe for Mexico. I have to talk with Rafa on that, but definitely a preview show coming up for U.S. versus Bosnia and Herzegovina, slated for July 1st in Santa Clara at Levi Stadium. So lots to get to, lots of action as we wrap up the last couple of days of match day 3. But final thoughts, whatever it is, whether it's particularly looking forward, don't want to spend too much time looking back regarding the U.S. men's national team. Final thoughts, guys, anything?
Well,
In the
first,
words of the late, great Al Davis, just win, baby. Just win.
I want to thank all the college students that are listening to us. Here we're big on college campuses. And then I really cannot wait for the 37-hour World Cup bracketology episode we're going to do. Really excited for that coming up.
You'll be you might be on that panel all by yourself on 37 hours, man. Damn. But yeah, hey, we can get a great sponsor for that. That'd be awesome. So we'll go. We'll go consecutive.
Let me talk to the people in the Cook Islands.
There you go. There you go. Wes, what do you got? Anything?
No, I think it's going to be exciting over these next couple of days. Listen, I went 6 for 6 on my bets yesterday, so I am going to try to duplicate that as well. I mean, we're not talking crazy money, like $10 bets, but I hit them all yesterday. So,
Hector, I found us a sponsor for the 37-hour bracketology.
Yeah? Okay,
it's
we'll talk more. We'll talk more. All right, Mike. Anything? You got anything?
No, Mitch, thanks for having me. Non-coach here, just having a good old time. Appreciate it.
Hey, that's a nice scarf you have behind you, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Forgot to mention.
From a very generous man.
Yeah. That is going to do it for episode 11 of the Red, White, and Crew podcast. Thank you, all of our listeners, all of our supporters, as we continue to grow this. So really appreciate you guys. You guys can say you guys were our day ones. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And until the next time, you know what to do. Keep downloading and keep